And good evening. My name is Steve Kenny. I'm a 20-year resident of Port Hueneme and currently operating as a consultant to the city on some real estate matters and business development matters. And so that explains my presence here tonight, along with a couple people from the city staff who you will meet presently. Tony Stewart, the city's community development director, is here, as well as Charlie Green, the city attorney. And they'll be up shortly. It's ironic what a really pleasant evening it is here in Port Hueneme this evening, isn't it? As much as it's going on in the world all around us. But right here tonight, we're blessed with what we've, I guess, come to expect of our community, which is just a wonderful place to be. And we want to talk about that tonight, both in terms of what a potential hotel project will do for the aesthetics of our community, as well as what it might do for the financial stability of our community. And those are probably the two big values that are going to be in play as we talk about the potential project that's the subject of tonight's meeting. Now, I recognize many of you from a somewhat similar meeting we had back in the summer, in June I think it was, when we met at the Ocean View Pavilion, thanks to George and Sharon, thank you very much, who helped us host a meeting there to talk about the potential of a cannabis-related use at the building on Industrial Way, which was actually still is for a little while longer the city's public works facility down there. It's a similar sort of meeting tonight because, just as was the case last time, we're here to talk about a project idea without having a project. Last time we were there to talk about what might be the effects on the surrounding neighborhood and the community of a use that had a cannabis component to it, whether it was for manufacturing or cultivation or what might take place in that building. And at the time, there was no entity involved who the city was lined up to have move into that building and actually carry it out. So we were sort of talking in the abstract, a little bit in the what-if world, just to try and get as much information as possible out into the community in advance of having a specific project to deal with. And I explain that because that's exactly the same scenario tonight. We're here to talk about a hotel project without having a hotel to talk about. So if you came here with your architecture critic shoes on to try and assess whether a particular hotel building looks good or not, you'll be disappointed because there is no building. There is no project. There is no developer, although there is someone that we've been starting conversations with. But that's all yet to be determined in the future. Tonight we're going to talk about the idea of allowing a hotel project to be built at the site which you're all familiar with down at the end of Surfside Drive, on a parcel which the city owns and may well sell for this purpose. So we're here to talk about the pros and cons of what a hotel, some kind of hotel, would do on that site for the city as a whole and for the community around it in particular. So that being the case, I expect that there will be a lot of questions tonight to which the answer will be, we don't know yet. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. There's a little frustration factor involved with that, but that's the price you pay for starting the conversation early on before there are any details to give you specifics about.
Is there a person or a company that's interested in doing this development that you're speaking to right now and who is here tonight?
The question was, could you all hear what the question was? I'm sort of testing the acoustics of the room here as to whether we've got used the mic for everybody or not. The question was, is there a specific developer sort of in line who's here tonight to be identified, question perhaps? The answer is there is a developer who we have been talking with interest in the project. His name is Harvey Champlin, and he has history in the community because you all know, I expect, that he was involved with an earlier an earlier project that didn't go anywhere about 10 years ago for a much larger hotel down near the Ocean View Pavilion. So that's the gentleman who we've been in discussion with. He's not here tonight because it's too early for that to happen. We want to have this discussion before there's a developer with a hotel project for the pros and cons on. So I'm already seeing some hands up. I think what I'd like to do is just finish up with my intro comments. Certainly the main purpose tonight is to hear your questions and your comments. So I'm not going to filibuster here for an hour and then go home. But I do want to just lay the groundwork for what the discussion is tonight, okay? So really all I need to say in addition is, you know the site, you all know where we are, end of Surfside Drive, Market Street, city-owned piece here. Across the way is this undeveloped piece now, directly in front of it, and a Kappa View townhomes.
And a Kappa View single-family homes.
They're not townhomes.
They're not townhomes, they're single-family homes.
Beg your pardon.
Thank you.
The other thing I want to mention here is kind of what's driving this whole discussion from the city's perspective. You know, why is the city even entertaining ideas like this, given the fact that there's bound to be some controversy about it and some divided opinions in the community? Why are we even opening this door? And the reason I think comes about if you look at some goals that surround the potential development on this site. I think you've stood around and read them, but let me just make sure you know what they are. Number one, top of the list, generate significant revenue for the city to strengthen the general fund tax base. That is far and away the driver here. The city is in really dire financial straits. From a general fund perspective, every year reserves have been tapped into to keep the budget balanced, and as a result, the reserves have been plummeting. We're nearly at the point within a year or two where the reserves will dip into negative numbers, and that's no way to live. So the overarching goal of the city, not just with this project, but for a number of other things, including the one that we talked about in June, was to find sources of revenue to stabilize the general fund at first, and then ultimately to grow it so that we can all continue to expect to receive and receive the services that we look to a city to provide to us. So goal number one, revenue generation. Goal number two is high quality hotel, possible office facilities. This relates to the port. The port is a significant generator of business to the city. It's a significant generator of revenue directly to the city. 10% of the port's profits every year go directly into the city's general fund. It's one of the biggest individual supporters of the general fund that there is. So there's the possibility that a hotel/office at this site can be a stimulus for the port itself and help the port to grow, which in turn relates to revenue growth for the city. Third, or optimize one of the key remaining sites in the city of sufficient size to support a beachfront hotel. So it's sort of on the same theme. if we're going to look to a hotel to be a significant development in the city, both for revenue production as well as image and tourism support for a lot of other small businesses that relate to the tourism sector, then there aren't that many choices to look to. And in fact, this seems to be about the only one. Fourth, enhance the promenade and public access to the lighthouse. It just happens that the promenade, as you know, goes right by the site. Certainly, if there's going to be a project there, it's an opportunity for the city to require the developer to upgrade the promenade all the way up to the lighthouse, which is a great tourism draw in its own right. So that's an ancillary benefit from such a project. And then finally, number 5, you'll notice a similarity in wording to number 1. Generate significant revenue for the city to strengthen the general fund tax base. That's not there by mistake. That is why the city is driving this whole discussion, and we've got to keep that in the forefront of our minds. So that's the idea behind entertaining discussions with the developer to create a hotel in the city. Tony Stewart is the Community Development Director, and he's the city's overseer for the process involved with the planning for and the permitting for a project like this. I think just for a couple minutes, Tony could just describe, if a hotel were to go forward, how would that happen in the city? Where are the points at which there's a public component to the whole discussion and decision making, just so that you'll know, you'll have the confidence that tonight's not the one and only time. You've got an opportunity to express an opinion, that there are other benchmark points going out into the future, actually a number of them, at which you can participate in the decision-making process with the city council. So we'll just sort of highlight that, and then I think at that point it would be time to hear from you. So I'll ask you to come on up.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everybody. Just real quickly then, as Steve mentioned, there are going to be many opportunities for your input and the rest of the community's input during this process. I'm also not going to wander around here because I'm not going to trip on this court. So anyway, assuming that we move forward with selection of this developer, or any developer for that matter, we would first of all enter into negotiations, and part of that process would be to go to the city council and ask to enter into the negotiations. Assuming that we can move forward with that, then we get into what we consider the actual planning process. At that point, the selected developer would put together plans, so we'd actually have a project proposal. They would submit what we call a formal application for entitlements. Most likely that would be for the design and also any changes to the zoning ordinance that we need to make. And then once that was vetted out through staff and we were able to deem what we call the application complete, that it met all of the submittal requirements, then we would start the environmental process. And the first part of that is to have what we call a public scoping meeting, which is a lot like this, where at that point we would actually have something to show you, and we would then be talking about what would be needed for the environmental document, whether it be, and most likely it would be an environmental impact report, and so we would again ask for the public's input on what should be put into that particular document. Keep in mind, it wouldn't be comments such as, we don't like the project, we don't want it, but it would be what issues you folks felt should be addressed in the environmental impact report, be it traffic, viewshed, noise, air quality, etc. We would vet that through the process, which takes up to about a year to go through, so this is not an easy process. And through that process, there are actually a couple more times where we seek public input again for the preparation of the final document. Then it would go back through as a single package to the city council through a public hearing process. At that point, again, another chance for public input. The city council would make their decision. And then once that's all done, then we would have to take it all to the coastal commission, because this property is within an appealable coastal commission area. And so the coastal commission actually has final authority over the approval or denial of a project on this property. So again, a whole new public input process at that point. And just to let you know, we are also intending to get the Coastal Commission involved very early on the process here too. So we're going to basically take what we're sharing with you tonight, which is not a whole lot design-wise, to the Coastal Commission probably towards the end of January is what we're aiming for. Again, to gauge their input, because if we don't get a good feeling from them, then I think we need to step back and reevaluate the situation. So in a nutshell, that's basically how the public process works. So we're looking at something that will probably take, I would say, easily up to 2 years to go through. So there are going to be quite a few benchmarks and opportunities for public engagement throughout this entire process.
Can you clarify one thing, the parking area? Is there going to be a bathroom there?
At this point, we don't have any plans for any improvements on either of these parcels, so I could not tell you that.
How big
City
is,
have
how
any
big is the
ordinance on how tall
parcel?
building can be built?
Where the
How many stories?
Yeah, let's get ready for the public comment period here in some order. The one thing I want to make sure that you understand is that thanks to Tom Dunn, who's here tonight taping this whole event, we'll have a record of everything that's said tonight, and we'll be able to distill that and certainly make the commentary that's provided tonight, make that available to the city council as well. So you're not speaking into a elected official vacuum here tonight, just so that you know. Okay, so now it's time to hear from you. This microphone, as you can see, is not a wireless mic, so we don't have unlimited ability to pass it around the room. I think it's important that everybody hear what every comment is. So, sorry, but I will ask you to at least come to the center aisle or something, and I'll get the microphone as close to you as I can, so that we can kick this off.
Suggestion, have them line up to make their comments and then go one at a time. That way there's some order.
You won't need the microphone for you, they'll be able to look.
Well, let me just take a poll in the room here. How many people intend to make a comment? Okay. Tracy's got a good idea. Because no matter what I do in random picks, somebody's going to be mad. I would
It
rather.
might help us, can you just tell us where this idea originated? You started the idea, but where did it come from? That might be helpful.
Okay, but as I do that, if you've got a comment that you want to make, yeah, come on up here if you will, so that we've just got try to a row of people. You'll be right here by the microphone when it's your turn to make a comment.
Is that a question?
So the question David just asked was, where did this idea originate from? I think the answer to that is that a year or so ago, the previous community development director in the city, who was also the city manager for a while, John Baker, undertook a real thorough examination of all the vacant land that was owned by the city. And with the goal in mind of thinking that with limited resources, with a need for revenue growth, how can the city translate the few available assets that it has into something that will create some general fund revenue? So there was an inventory of the city-owned parcels, and that was made into a list. And as a result of that list, there have been some projects projects, some ideas put forward on a number of them over the last year. This is one, the industrial way property is another. We just had some discussion last night at the council meeting on some lots on Pleasant Valley Road. There's a little blue house on Port Whitney Road by the museum that the city owns. That's being looked at as a potential project to create some revenue. So this is one of a more comprehensive program to try and translate city assets into available city revenue. I think that's the origin of it. And with that, I think we will start our commentary. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rosemary Tobin, and I live at 208 Sea Spray Way in Anacapa View Beach Homes. How big is the hotel office building property? How many acres? It's 2 acres? Okay, and the parking lot? 3-ish, and do you have any idea how many cars could park there?
That would really depend, again, on the design of the project.
Okay, and if the city sells the property to the developer, you make money that way. How else do you get revenue from the property? Is that it? You just get the money that you...
Very good question. I appreciate you asking that because actually the sale of the property is step one, and that's presumably some near-term revenue. But if you look at, particularly from a hotel, what kind of year after year revenue could come out of that, it really is in the range of over $1 million.
And how do you, I don't understand how you get revenue from a hotel.
Right. The question is how does revenue come from a hotel? There are two principal sources. One is, well, there's the original sale, and then once the developer owns the property, it's now in private hands, and so it's taxable for property tax. So there's a property tax component that comes in every year to the city. But frankly, the much more lucrative source is called transient occupancy tax, bed tax that hotels always charge, and it's 10% in Port Hueneme, as it is in many cities around the county. So, I mean, in the absence of the specific project, I can't do the exact math, but I was trying to just rough out. If you assume like maybe a couple 100-room hotel, which is an average size for the site, something like that, an average occupancy, this is not precise, but in terms of order of magnitude, that alone can produce $1 million a year.
My next question is that these are residential streets, they're not very wide, and the traffic on them, who's going to maintain those streets? The city, and that's going to cost you a lot of money too. And it also looks like you're taking away part of the walkway to the lighthouse. You're just going to reconfigure that? Is that what's going to happen? Okay, that's about all you can tell me because you don't know, so.
It is true. I mean, her comment about the configuration of the walkway, I mean, that's certainly one that's got some flexibility to it. I mean, where it is right now, it was put there because it was in the middle of a totally vacant piece and there were no real constraints on it. I think there's an opportunity to carve that out into a little more accurate fashion and also just be improved as a requirement of the developer as a part of the project. All right, sir.
My name's Jim McIntyre. My name's Jim McIntyre, and I live at 116 East Pearl Street, and that's right near the entrance to the port. Such a tiny little parcel, you're saying it's a couple 100-room hotel and so forth, would have to be how many stories? 10? 12? Ish. Ish? Okay. And the parking is obviously going to have to be multi-story as well in order to accommodate, enough vehicles and so forth to service that.
What's the water table there? Underground. Yeah, that's right. It serves like nearly washed away.
Well, scrap that idea then.
Okay. Well, that's not what I was getting into. For that purpose, is it worth compromising the lives and property values of some of your most prime residents? Yeah. of
City
the community
taxpayers.
And so forth. Because it's going to wipe out their entire
City
view.
voters.
City voters.
How many stories?
Well,
10 to 12.
That certainly has been an issue. Put it out there, but that's what has to be wrestled with in the course of coming to a decision on the project. You're right. Yes? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm a 58-year resident of Old Port Wainema. My question is, how much has the city been offered for those properties?
We can't hear you.
The question was, how much has the city been offered for the properties? And the answer is there has been no offer made because we haven't completed an appraisal of the property to know what we need to get from it.
I don't believe you. Can you guesstimate? I need to say that I'm totally opposed to this. I don't mean to transfer my frustration onto you, but I don't believe you. Can you guess?
No. I'm not the treasurer.
Excuse me. My name is Tom King. I have a couple properties here in Port Wainema. In particular, like many people that are here today, at Anacapa View Beach Homes, not townhomes. I have a residence right here overlooking what is generally termed the Guion easement, or now the parking area, proposed parking area. I know there are a lot of people here from Anacapa View Beach Homes. Can you just raise your hand? Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge Antipolo for bringing up at our directors meeting what was happening here today, and it's because of Tom Dunn's, I want to recognize Tom Dunn for having posted information about this. Nowhere could I find anything from the city, this is my private outrage, about this meeting tonight. Nothing, okay? Maybe you've put it all over the stratosphere, but certainly I found out about it from a posting from Tom Dunn. How many people are here from Surfside 1? How many people from Surfside 3? I'm not suggesting that they're all for or against the project, but in October, in the notes of the city council, there were 37 pages, I believe I got the number right, devoted to this project that you're talking about. It is disingenuous to me that an agreement that has been entered into with this developer, which you're saying you don't know, that no agreement has been struck. The lady before me asked a very reasonable question. I remember seeing, I think it was on Tom's website, that he estimates that there would be about $200,000 from the sale of the project going to the city. My concern is the location. And we can all say not in my backyard. And I know that there are a lot of people, and you just saw where these people are from, that are concerned about the location. This developer that you're talking about, 2007, 46 stories over by Surfside 3. Nobody thought about the casting of the shadow over Surfside 3. Forget Surfside 3. Yes, they're voters. Yes, they're owners. But you know what? The city was eager for the money. The developer was eager for the money. But for a lot of reasons, and certainly the foundation where people were going to park and how people were going to access the beach, it didn't happen. And it was because of people like you showing up, constantly showing up and making your words heard. So I applaud you for being here and making your presentation. But in terms of the location, certainly I'm against that. I'm sure if I asked for some applause, you'd find some other people here not so eager for this to be here. The money that you talked about to Mrs. Tobin, the first speaker, about coming from the, I've seen it advertised as Twin Towers, 12 stories. You can speak to that. But if they were anywhere else, the amount of money that would be generated, other than from the sale on this property, would be the same. It would be the same source of funds. So to look at this and say to strengthen the general fund, to generate significant revenue, you know, we've had people, how much money have we spent from the city council and from other areas, HUD, city council members getting themselves in trouble with legal suits in terms of having to do these huge payoffs? If that money was better spent inside Port Hueneme, emotionally for me, this is, and I think for a number of other people here, this is totally unacceptable. I'll let you start.